Hey guys, so I'm just going to talk to you here a little bit about a guide that I channel. And I did a session with him on Monday, and so I was going to talk to you about some of the things that have come through from that session. I will be attempting to post extracts of that onto Instagram so you can hear it directly, although I'm having some technical difficulties at the moment in doing that, which is quite interesting. So that tends to happen when I channel this being, but I'm sure we'll get there and you will hear more of it. But here's a few of the things that came through. I have had to make some notes, and I'll be referring to those for this because I cannot remember it all from the top of my head. So the guide that I channel is a seventh dimensional Pleiadian, and his name is Kistos. He is able to move into and out of a light body. So he can sort of take a more physical form, take on a little bit more density, which I think makes him quite an effective guide when it comes to human experience as well. Anyway, he was explaining that there are 12 layers of frequency, which is what we refer to as dimensions. So some of you may have already heard this kind of concept of 12 dimensions, and he's from the seventh. So each one kind of increases in frequency, but what he was explaining is that within each layer of frequency, so within each of the 12 dimensions, there are multiple dimensions kind of packed in between that. And so if we wish to move into a different frequency and experience the dimensions within it, then we have to regularly practice shifting our frequency in meditative states in order to adjust ourselves so that our body and energy is more able to hold that frequency. So if you go into a meditation, you're able to experience that kind of slight lift that you get, or a drop, depending on whether you're kind of going up or down. You might experience it once or twice, but it's not going to become something that you experience all the time once you're not in those states. So what he was kind of explaining is that the more you practice doing that, the more you're able to hold that frequency at other times, not just in meditation. So if you're looking to manifest, for example, more joy and abundance, shifting yourself into a slightly higher frequency will help you to do that, and you can focus your energy on it in a meditation. But if you are able to do that often, then that eventually starts to become your state of being, and you will see more of that as the sort of general rule of your experience rather than just something that you're able to do every so often. So once we've practiced this, then we're able to hold that state more permanently and therefore reside in a higher frequency. And eventually that sort of leads to being able to reside in a higher dimension. So if you've heard about this shift from 3D to 5D, that's kind of what's happening. So collectively our frequency is lifting. Some will choose not to lift and they'll choose to stay in the third, because that's relevant for their human experience at the moment and what their soul has pre-contracted to do. But for many, they will actually move up into the fifth, and many already have or are kind of got 1 foot in between each at the moment. So once you are experiencing that kind of frequency and manifestation on a regular basis, and that's where you begin to actually move more permanently and in a more physical sense. So you awaken your extra sensory perceptions, and they are more accessible to you more of the time rather than just having to go into very focused states to experience that. He explained that lower frequency beings cannot enter the higher ones without doing this practice. So that kind of eliminates malevolent behavior in the higher planes, because such behavior is not in resonance with those higher dimensions. And it's naturally eradicated as frequency changes. So if you are someone who generally doesn't have the most pleasant intentions towards others, that's usually because you're already in a lower vibratory state. So once you concentrate on lifting your frequency, you don't have the same kind of desire to behave in ways that aren't for the good of others as well, because it just, your resonance changes and you're not in resonance with that kind of low frequency behavior. Beings from higher frequencies cannot lower their frequency to the lower planes, because in order to do so they have to create density, and once they've done this they cannot return easily to the higher planes, because they need to shift that density to do so. And he was telling me that this is what happened to the star beings from the early civilizations such as Atlantis and ancient Egypt. Some of them had come here to have a human experience, but in order to have a human experience they had to lower their frequency, which made them take on, so they had to take on a human body, and they weren't able to shift in and out of it so easily with their light body, because then they wouldn't be able to stay here. And this actually caused some of them to get stuck, and so they had to remain on the planet and continue having human experience. Most humans at the time weren't able to perceive them if they were only in a light body, which is why they kind of had to take on a physical form. And Gaia, so the planet herself, had too low a resonance for high frequency beings to remain here for any length of time. So now Gaia's resonance is shifting. There are multiple events that are kind of causing that to happen, but her kind of natural progression through the cosmos, through space, is causing that as well. So now we are able to lift frequency and still be in resonance with the planet, therefore kind of not affecting how our physical bodies function. So for example, when I channel the seventh dimension, when I first began doing that, I had to kind of learn how to accept that different frequency in my own body, and I think that's why I didn't experience that channeling until recent years, when I had done enough kind of work, released enough density, and got into a space where I actually could remain in that frequency. Because if I tried that a few years ago, the state of mind that I was in, and the lack of balance would have just meant that I just couldn't hold it, and it would have been incredibly tiring, or possibly led to physical ailments as well. So being able to raise your frequency just makes it easier to be open to allowing other beings to be able to come in who are of a higher frequency. Same as when you're in a particularly low resonance, it makes low frequency beings able to get into your energy and into your space more easily too, which I think is why you sometimes see that people that have quite severe, like mentally destructive states of mind, or real problems with addictions that are just that are completely controlling them, they are more susceptible to attachment from negative entities as well, which then in turn makes it even harder to lift your frequency. So becoming aware of this, learning how to protect yourself from it, and learning how to bring yourself into states where you can gradually just start to lift that a little bit, not only kind of serves to help you with manifestation and experiencing more joyful, more abundant living, it also does offer you some kind of element of protection from the lower planes, from anything that might have a more malevolent intention towards you. I'm not trying to scare anyone there, because there are always ways that you can kind of deal with these things, but it's definitely preferable to have the higher frequency beings wanting to make contact with you or work with you than it is the lower ones. Kistos also commented on psychoactive components, there seems to be quite a lot of use of those kind of substances, plant-based and otherwise, in order to help people to access those higher states. And he was just kind of letting me know that that doesn't shift your frequency permanently. It's kind of like giving you a doorway and you can look through, but you can't enter for any length of time. So you go in, you have like a little taste of it. Maybe it alerts you to the possibilities, to what you can access and to what you can lift yourself to or lower yourself to, but it's not a way to permanently move into that frequency. So if you do kind of go and have one of those journeying experiences, it's maybe a good way to bring your realization to what else there is in, and that our kind of reality isn't necessarily as black and white as we might have initially been conditioned to believe it is. But it doesn't mean that you'll be able to hold that state and kind of continue accessing it. And you do kind of need to do the self-work and go through a bit of a spiritual process in order to be able to start to move in and out of those states more with your own free will. So they kind of give you a glimpse of what you can experience on other astral planes and frequency layers, but it doesn't necessarily become your permanent state of being. And he was also talking about the collective dark night of the soul, and that's definitely been noticed with the kind of chaos and polarization, a lot of aggression between people over sometimes really quite trivial things. I've seen people really arguing to or against, like in favor of a celebrity. It's not anything that really affects your own existence, but people are getting really sucked into these kind of really opposed debates. But we often see that kind of thing before an awakening event happens, or whilst an awakening event is happening, as people's realities are being challenged. And remember that the dark night of the soul always brings huge levels of transformation. So when we go through our own spiritual journey, we end up with a lot of shadow work quite often, as we are called to drop density. And that can be a painful process to go through sometimes. It's not always easy. Sometimes going on a spiritual path calls you to just drop so much and let go of so many things that you don't think that you're ready to let go of. But you kind of are if you've been called to that place to do it. It just doesn't feel like it at the time. And so this is just kind of a reminder from Kistos, really, that if you are going through that process, and as we are collectively, we're seeing that on a global scale, that this stripping of density, that this kind of negative view of human experience will lead to a breakthrough, will lead to a transformation. So it is a positive thing. Concentrate as much as you can on any fragment of light that you can see, and not on the dark places where the darkness may appear to be prevailing. This is illusory, but when you focus on it, you give it the potential to manifest. So whilst I'm not trying to convey that you shouldn't pay attention to things that are going on in the negative, but there is only a certain amount, if anything, that you can do about some events. So the more energy you focus on being angry or upset or frightened by that thing, the more energy you actually give that thing. Whereas if you are able to instead refocus as much as you can on positive changes that you see or witness, and there are plenty of them. Sometimes you've got to look a bit harder because they don't get reported as much, keeping you in fear. But yeah, if you can kind of find those more positive things to put your focus on, then you're taking the power and the energy out of the negative and unbalanced occurrences that are going on at the moment. Hope that's been of some use to you all, and like I say, I will be posting up some of the actual channeling so you can hear it directly from Kistos. And I'm sure he has got much more wisdom on the matter, loads that I've probably left out, so I hope you'll look forward to that.